Lifelong local journalist José Tejada is a reluctant politician. His candidacy for a seat in Congress is being promoted by the young protesters who rocked the city last spring and who are now looking for a change of leadership.
My obsession is to empower the youth. They have opened our eyes and said they don't want the country they have received.
Tejada has become famous in Colombia for his relentless coverage of the brutal police response to the protest. Hundreds of thousands marched across the country against economic inequality, corruption, and the government's plans to raise taxes on the middle class. But nowhere was the response more violent than in Cali, where armed civilians openly shot at protesters along with the police.
I saw kids losing their eyes, fall dead at our side, and I said enough. Their voices deserve to be heard. They are being criminalized.
Tejada is one of many first-time candidates endorsed by leftist parties hoping to change the balance of power in Congress, long controlled by conservatives. Fearing their growth, some politicians on the right are condemning last year's protests, calling them a guerrilla takeover. Others, while more moderate, still believe the protesters went too far.
The citizens here should not be using their force to replace the police. That's a reality. But what's also true is that the state is incapable of protecting citizens. And what's also true is that in those circumstances, you cannot simply expect people to just stay in their beds looking how their city is destroyed.
The consequences of last year's protests are still visible in this part of the city that has since been renamed Puerto Resistencia, or Port of Resistance. This, for example, is a memorial for some of the victims of the confrontations with the police, a potent symbol of the deep divisions that exist in this city and this country that will face off in Sunday's elections. Polls show that alternative candidates could control 45% of Congress. Most voters support a leftist coalition called the Historical Pact, led by presidential candidate Gustavo Petro, who has a 15% advantage over his closest rival. Their victory would represent a seismic shift.
For the first time, there's a real possibility that candidacies that don't come from traditional liberal or political elites could win the presidency and control Congress. And this generates turbulence, a latent political crisis.
Pitting those who believe the time for change has come against others who fear it would be a dangerous leap into the dark. Alessandro Rampietti, Al Jazeera, Cali.